How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with the boys, Alex and Ryan. Today we're discussing Anthony Volpe and why his presence and promotion to the major league level at some point this season could spell the end of Gleyber Torres in pinstripes. Now, we've talked extensively about Gleyber Torres, the value he has to this team coming off a really good season. His steamer projections have him getting even better. I think they have him at a 3.4 WAR and 120 WRC+, which is better than his 2020 metrics. Obviously, had 24 homers with 76 RBIs last year. Only got on base at 31%, but overall, he got back to where we are used to seeing him, at least back in 2018-19, with the juice baseballs, and clearly he had a little bit of power that, he was trying to rediscover, and he finally found it last season, and, as I said, there's value to be had with Gleyber Torres. Even if they end up moving him, you could supplement other positions that may be dealing with injury, whether it's the bullpen or a starting pitching spot. There are things that they could use in addition to, moving Gleyber Torres, and why Anthony Volpe could end up being the guy, the catalyst behind letting him go. But right now, Anthony Volpe projects to be in AAA. We expect that he will start the season in Scranton. He does have the green light to compete for the starting shortstop job, but at the end of the day, we're not too convinced that he's ready just yet. We need to see significant steps forward in terms of consistency against major league talent. He only had 22 games against AAA last year, so not much action to run with. But Ryan, when you're looking at Anthony Volpe, we've kind of discussed when we think he'll get elevated, but why do you think that he could be the reason Gleyber Torres is eventually traded, especially if Peraza locks down that shortstop job and doesn't let it go?
Yeah, so the two biggest factors in Anthony Volpe's progression, as you mentioned, number one, Volpe's most likely going to start in AAA. There's no reason to rush his development. There's no real reason for the New York Yankees to put themselves in a situation where in April, when they have a proven second baseman in Gleyber Torres, for them to go up there and end up, potentially hurting Volpe's development by forcing him into a starting role. Peraza, as you mentioned, is an excellent defensive shortstop, is probably going to be the guy who holds on to shortstop, at least for the time being. We don't know how he's going to hit. We don't know how he projects long term, but if he is what he should be, he's going to be a very good shortstop and a player that the Yankees really shouldn't move off the position due to his defense. But one of the biggest variables here is Gleyber Torres, right? As you mentioned, Gleyber Torres not only is someone that, kind of rediscovered his power last year, but took some really big signs that, he can have a bigger 2023. As you mentioned, projections like him more for next year than they did even for his 2022 season. So if Gleyber Torres goes out there and has, that really good all-star caliber year consistently from game 1 to game 162, do you put yourself in a position where potentially you put Volpe at shortstop, even with Peraza playing well, because Gleyber is playing so well that you can't take his bat out of the lineup, right? But the situation I think ends up happening is that Peraza's playing pretty well. Gleyber's also playing pretty well, but Gleyber's number one, the more expensive option, number two, the more expendable option, and number three, the guy who I think has the lower ceiling between him and Volpe at this point in time. If we look at ZiPS, which is a projection system on Fangraphs, they have 80th and 20th percentile. So 80th percentile would mean, one of the better outcomes. We're talking about a really good outcome for this player. And then 20th percentile be a poor outcome for this player. If we're looking at floor and ceiling, Gleyber Torres' 80th percentile WAR projected by ZiPS is 4.2, whereas Volpe's is 4.4. OPS plus favors Gleyber at 129 versus 120 in this regard. And then if we're looking at their floors, Volpe has a lower OPS plus in his 20th percentile, which is an 81 OPS plus, which is below league average. And Torres at a 9.1 OPS plus in his 20th percentile. But because of defensive value and base running value, Volpe still has the better 20th percentile WAR. So if we're looking at it from a player value standpoint, who has the higher ceiling, who has the higher floor, Volpe might be the guy who has the better floor and ceiling, but we're talking about a rookie versus a veteran, right? We know what we have in Gleyber Torres. We have more accurate data for projecting players when we're talking about major league players versus guys coming through the minor leagues. Is it to say that you can't reasonably expect Volpe to be a major league contributor in 2023? Absolutely not. But can you say that Gleyber Torres is more reliable, perhaps? Definitely. So it's one of those situations where this isn't us saying Gleyber isn't a good player or any of us saying that, Gleyber doesn't deserve to be the second baseman, but more so, we think he's a safer option. Volpe has a higher ceiling, but end of the day, it comes down to expendability. And based on the information we have right now, out of Peraza, Volpe, and Gleyber's the most expendable and also the most expensive option of the three.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a really good explanation. The only way that Gleyber Torres I see has a future with this team, and that's not to say he's not the cemented starting second baseman right now, because he 100% is. And for the record, I'm not looking to trade Gleyber Torres. I don't think either of us are in a position where we're like, yeah, let's get rid of Gleyber Torres. He's not that good. We want to get value out of him, whatever. He's our starting second baseman. We're just projecting the fact that Anthony Volpe will end up taking a starting job in that infield, and Peraza is pretty much in line to win that shortstop job, and you can't leave DJ LeMahieu out of the equation, so he's playing on the hot corner. The only person expendable is Gleyber Torres, and unfortunately that is just the reality of the situation. But with that being said, you can take advantage of that value, and you can get good pieces that supplements or reinforces other positions that may be a little bit weaker. So right now, yes, I'm actually pretty high on Gleyber Torres right now. I think he's going to come back and have a really solid 2023 season. The opposite power he showed last year and displayed in Yankee Stadium was awesome. If he can do that consistently again, you're looking at a really good player. He can steal some bases for you, 10 plus. They have him projected at 13 stolen bases in 2023. Defensively, he was one of the best defensive second basemen in the game last season. It was his best defensive year in general. Obviously they moved him back from shortstop to second base, his more traditional spot, and he excelled. And there is a lot to be had with a player like that. Good defensive second baseman. He's seemingly getting back to normal in the offensive categories, and he's only a free agent in 2025, so you still have another full 2 years of control over him. If the Yankees are going to move him now, whatever team takes him on, you have 2 years of good quality second base play. That's extremely valuable. If you move him at the deadline, you have the postseason and the second, a month or two left of the regular season of this year, and really, it only matters, you can say, okay, 2 full years of control. That's super valuable. But if you're a playoff team and your second baseman goes down, or you're having issues at second base, and you're like, we need to plug this position, that's a spot we need to fix. If we get a guy right now that offers us value, I'll tell you what, if you're a playoff team, you go out and you trade for Gleyber Torres and you push deep into the postseason, maybe you don't win the World Series, maybe you do, you're going to be like, that was the same exact value as if I had him the entire season. We still made the playoffs. If you're headed to the postseason, the entire goal of the regular season is to get to the playoffs. So if you're cemented in the playoffs, you need to upgrade at second base, Gleyber Torres can be that guy for you. That's worth a full year of control. You know what I mean? That's worth this full year and then next year as well. So I'm really excited to see what they do with him. If we ended up keeping him, I would be more than happy. The only way I see the Yankees end up retaining Gleyber Torres for the entirety of his controlled years is if there's injuries in the infield and the Yankees just simply can't move him. Whether maybe DJ LeMahieu goes down or Donaldson goes down, or, I don't know, maybe they trade IKF for Donaldson, maybe Peraza gets injured. That's the only way that I see Gleyber Torres staying for sure. But we have an embarrassment of riches in the infield right now. We have so many great shortstop infielders developing through the system, whether it be Trey Sweeney, Roderick Arias, Volpe, Peraza. Choose your guy. There's tons of talent coming through the system, and we haven't even seen some of those younger ones. Arias is a ridiculous 5-tool player that was 19 or 18 years old. He's just joining this farm system. He's going to skyrocket through this farm system so fast. He's got all the tangible traits to get it done and be an electric player for us down the line. That's not to say he's going to be an impactful player within the next 2 years, but I do really feel as though Volpe is their guy. He's going to be a starter no matter what way you look at it. The only other way I see Gleyber Torres staying is if the Yankees say, you know what, I think that Volpe was always our long-term shortstop. Let's put him at shortstop, and then you trade Peraza, which could be a realistic thing for what it's worth. I'll ask you this, Ryan. I know the probability of trading Torres is probably higher than trading Peraza, but is it unrealistic to think that maybe they end up moving Oswald instead of Gleyber, if they're looking for a bigger name to maybe upgrade the left field position, for example, or add a starting pitcher if, we have some issues down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of factors here that can play into everything. Trey Sweeney got called up to Double-A to end last year. Spent some time there. Wasn't bad, wasn't great, but it was his first year at Double-A. It was his cup of coffee. So if Trey Sweeney has a big Double-A, he gets called up to Triple-A, and the Yankees feel like, Torres is playing really well. Volpe is progressing well. Peraza is solid, but we think Volpe can be a better shortstop. Even not defensively, but overall as a player, he's a better shortstop than Oswald Peraza is. And then at that point, you feel like Gleyber Torres is playing so well, you just can't take him out of the lineup. You look at Trey Sweeney as that replacement when Gleyber Torres hits free agency. Another factor here people don't realize: if the Yankees win a World Series and Gleyber Torres is under contract for that World Series, and then they just let him go in free agency, that's not a loss, right? Would you rather get value back for Gleyber Torres, or have the best possible team on paper. Another big variable here is, what is Stanton's ability to play left field look like in the postseason? The Yankees know how to rotate the infield in the regular season. DJ LeMahieu, Gleyber Torres, Josh Donaldson all got playing time, and IKF, despite the fact that there's 3 infield spots for those 4 to play, right? Injuries happen, slumps happen, things happen. Four of those guys got playing time, despite the fact that there were 3 infield spots for them, right? What if, in this world where Stanton's able to play left field, which he's been able to do in Houston and potentially could do so in Yankee Stadium, we saw it in the LCS last year, you move Gleyber Torres to DH and have Oswald Peraza play shortstop and Volpe play second base in the postseason. That deepens your lineup, right? You remove maybe a question mark in left field. Even if you acquire someone at the deadline, maybe that left fielder is a better matchup against a right-handed pitcher than a guy like Bader could be, right? So you put yourself in a position where you're kind of not platooning per se, but you're kind of putting the best possible lineup against that specific pitcher and deepening your bench. That's a situation the Yankees could be in. And that's a scenario where, you could be looking at your outfield and your infield and feel really damn good about that lineup. Could you imagine a lineup where you have a Gleyber Torres playing so well that the Yankees do not want to move him at DH, a Stanton that's healthy enough to play left field, out in left field, a pretty good Anthony Volpe and Oswald Peraza, because again, they'd have to be playing well enough that you feel comfortable putting them in a postseason environment, and to the point where you need to put Stanton in left field to have all 3 of them in that lineup. That is a potent Yankees lineup. That is a deep Yankees lineup. That is a speedy Yankees lineup as well. Peraza and Volpe in the middle infield, those 2 guys are fast as hell. They're going to play excellent defense up the middle, fantastic range. Volpe's only big dock as a shortstop is the arm. They feel like the arm isn't necessarily strong enough to be an excellent defensive shortstop. Move that to second base and watch that become an elite defensive second baseman. I think you can agree with me here. There is a legitimate world where Gleyber Torres goes out next year and puts up a 125 OPS plus or WRC plus, hits 25 plus home runs, and you can't take that out of the lineup. There's no reason to take that out of the lineup. Figure out a way to get guys played, right? Josh Donaldson's, this is last year on their contract. If he's not playing that well, DFA him. You're gonna pay him anyways. You might as well pay him to not get in the way of Anthony Volpe, right? Not saying I want Josh Donaldson to do poorly, or I'm rooting for Josh Donaldson to do poorly, but in a situation where he is, that's what you have to do. Injuries happen all the time. DJ LeMahieu has missed 2 straight postseasons. You cannot sit here and say DJ LeMahieu is a lock to get from game 1 to game 162 completely healthy, playing at 100%. Even guys like Anthony Rizzo have had injury issues in the past. You can't sit here and say that this team isn't better with Gleyber Torres, but you also can't sit here and say that the Yankees need to treat Gleyber as an untouchable. It's really, I think this is kind of the message of the entire episode, right? Volpe is going to force the Yankees to make an uncomfortable decision in the infield if he plays very well. But an uncomfortable decision, that's kind of a good problem to have. But also, Gleyber Torres could force the Yankees to, at least for the time being, at least for 2023, say, you know what, we have a little bit of a logjam here. It's a little bit of a clunky defensive alignment. It's a little bit of a weird lineup, but he's such a good hitter and he's such a good player that we're going to hold on to Gleyber Torres and potentially tank the value we can get back, because this team is a World Series contender. This is a win-now team. The Yankees should prioritize winning over returning value for Gleyber Torres. I think you can agree with me there. I think fans can agree with me. End of the day, I don't care about putting up the banner of the Yankees got more than they should have for Gleyber Torres. The banner I care about is putting up the 28th World Series title.
I would love a World Series 28th title. That is all we want as Yankee fans. We've been begging. I mean, look, it's easier said than done, nonetheless. We have the talent to do it. You know what I mean? This team is composed of guys who, if not were in their prime and have a little bit of juice left over, are in the middle of their prime right now. I'd still say Rizzo's is in his prime. I think Judge could not be more in his prime. Bader, prime. Oswaldo Cabrera, just getting his feet wet in the MLB. Hicks, dusted, sweep him out. Infield, you look at Donaldson, defensively, he was a stud last year. Offensively, he's a bit of a liability, but maybe he was an anomaly. We'll find out, I guess, if they can't manage to trade him, which I don't think they can, given the fact he's owed $21 million and nobody wants to take on that type of money. Shortstop, IKF is more of a stopgap. Peraza, dipping his feet in the water. Volpe, going to be dipping his feet in the water. Gleyber Torres, middle of his prime. Our pitching staff, prime. Every one of them is in the middle of their prime. You know what I mean? So right now, I feel like this team, it always comes down to how healthy they are at the end. The Astros were pretty healthy down the stretch. The teams that maintain their health, look at Bryce Harper. The guy was playing with a significant injury and was still mashing homers every single day. So sometimes it just takes pushing through that pain. Like every year, by the time the postseason comes around, DJ LeMahieu's hurt, Giancarlo Stanton's hurt, one of our starting pitchers is missing. Like, somebody's coming off the IL. Like, they run out of gas because we overworked them. We learned a valuable lesson in 2022, and it's that we cannot force guys like Nestor Cortez, guys like Carlos Rodon, and even Severino to pitch too much. We cannot have them pitching more than what they're comfortable doing, because the postseason rolled around and you saw Nestor Cortez, man, he was a shell of himself. Like, he could not handle that type of workload. He had never pitched that much in his life. We're going to have to figure out a way to mitigate that type of usage, which is why, for the record, Ryan, made a really good argument yesterday regarding Matt Moore as a really good supplemental piece. Can be a bullpen arm, but it can also be a spot starter. Clark Schmidt, Domingo Germán, they're not going anywhere because we need them badly to fill in for starting pitchers and really help supplement those injuries, because it's going to be all about workload management this season. The Yankees make the postseason every single year, no matter how shitty our team is. A couple years ago when Gio Urshela and like Tyler Wade, and we had all these like random guys playing positions because everyone was injured. We need to do a better job utilizing our depth and young pieces to supplement injuries and supplement like significant workloads, so that way we're healthy when the postseason rolls around. They tried to do that. They put Severino on the 60-day IL. They put, what's his name? They put Nestor on the 15-day IL. They tried to keep guys off and whatnot, but the better way to go about this is not to just put them on the 60-day IL and come up with phantom injuries. It's to just mitigate their workload throughout the season. You know what I mean? You don't overwork them in the first half of the year. If the Yankees played the way they did in the second half of the season in the first half and then dominated like they did in the first half of the season, in the second half of the season, they probably would have made it to the World Series. You know what I mean? Like, they were kicking ass. They just ran out of gas, in my opinion. And a lot of those guys suffered injuries, losing DJ, losing Stanton for quite a while, Gleyber Torres finding out he was going to be traded and then, essentially just stopped hitting entirely. All of those variables played into what was a disappointing second half, and we're just hoping that the Yankees can turn things around and figure out a better way to keep everybody healthy. But with that being said, if they do figure it out and the infield stays healthy, Gleyber Torres could be an expendable piece that you may want to utilize to reinforce another position that may be not as healthy. So we'll see what happens, guys. Always happy to hear your perspectives below in the YouTube comments. Make sure to like and subscribe as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.